tired of spending hours trying to learn something new, only to feel like you didn't learn a thing? What if there was a way to make studying stick and even enjoy the process? Hello, listeners, and welcome back to The Science of Self, the podcast where we help you improve your life from the inside out. Today's featured book from Peter Hollins is the Study Skills Handbook: How to Ace Tests, Get Straight A's, and Succeed in School. This is from the Learning How to Learn book series, but it doesn't just apply to schooling. If you're trying to learn something for work or even just personal improvement, these tips and hints can help you accomplish your goals. Our episode today is the first half of Chapter 2, entitled Subject Mastery. We're going to take a look in this chapter at 6 different ways to improve the mastery that we have over a particular subject. Today's episode covers the first 3. And these first 3 in general all include the same process, that of expanding your learning by becoming a teacher. Nothing ensures that you know a subject the way you should by being able to teach it. We're also going to talk about the Protégé Effect, which declares that students who teach others perform better. And then finally, we'll look at analogies used in teaching. Analogies are like similes. Or should I say, a simile is an analogy. Okay, anyway. However you want to say it, analogies are powerful tools for conveying new concepts and can be used for many different topics and complex ideas. Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to check the show notes for the timestamp of the chapter summary at the end of the podcast if you need a quick refresher on the topics covered in today's episode. You might wonder why a book on learning would include a section on teaching. Rather than teaching and learning being opposites, they're really 2 aspects of the same single process. In understanding both, we gain a fuller appreciation than if we had examined the subject from just one side or the other. There is unexpected value in observing how others synthesize information. First, you'll see how someone else learns and absorbs information. Sometimes you can visibly see someone's face light up when they get it, and this is no small feat in the process of learning. Second, you'll see how the act of teaching improves the learning of the teacher. In observing how people synthesize information, you can improve upon how you do it. Understanding both sides of the coin is a helpful exercise. This, of course, is the process of teaching others to help you yourself learn. This chapter is about how learning to effectively teach others is a great method of learning in itself and a good skill to have in general. The learning pyramid. Have you ever had the experience of thinking you know something, and yet the moment you try to explain that to someone else, it all seems to fall apart? Suddenly, you don't feel so confident in your understanding. Using mind maps and notes are great ways of externalizing info so we can manipulate it clearly, but teaching others is the gold standard in externalization and quickly reveals any gaps or faulty assumptions in our own mental models. The infamous learning pyramid, also called the cone of experience, sheds light on why being able to teach is vital. In fact, much of what we talk about dances around the spectrum of more passive learning as less useful and more active learning as more impactful. This is what the learning pyramid encompasses. Some may take it as gospel, but the numbers are best if they're seen as rough guidelines. However, they still showcase the different results our learning activities as learners retain. 90% of what they learn when they teach someone else or use their skills immediately. 75% of what they learn when they practice what they learned. 50% of what they learn when engaged in a group discussion. 30% of what they learn when they see a demonstration. 20% of what they learn from audiovisual. 10% of what they've learned from reading. 5% of what they've learned from a lecture. These numbers aren't exact or necessarily even proven. As with most modern theories or modules of education, The learning pyramid faces its share of dissenters. However, it does show a general trend that's true. The more involved you are, the better you learn. The more active and deliberate, the better. Without a doubt, teaching is one of the most involved, participatory, and non-passive types of interactions with new information we can have. Like self-explanation and the Feynman technique, teaching someone not only roots information in your mind, it forces you to see what you truly can explain and what you can't. Teaching yourself is good. Teaching others is even better. Teaching exposes the gaps in your knowledge. Having to instruct and explain doesn't let you hide behind generalizations. Yeah, I know all about how that works. I'll skip it for now. That won't fly if you're explaining a process to someone else. You have to know how every step works and how each step relates to each other. You'll also be forced to answer questions about the information you're teaching and iron out the exact relationships between ideas. Having to explain what's going on is essentially a test of your knowledge, and you either know it or you don't. If you can't explain to someone how to replicate something you're teaching, then you actually don't know it yourself. For whatever reason, it's easy to believe you understand something better than you do right up until you're forced to prove it. Let's take photography as an example. According to the learning pyramid, reading and lecturing combined take up 15% of your retained knowledge, which makes sense. There's only so much you can learn about photography from a textbook or a lectern. Audiovisual aids and seeing demonstrations, what certain angles look like, how to use computers to filter a print, are more helpful in learning to take and process certain pictures. A group discussion about photography would unlock some memorable ideas, and, of course, spending the time to practice taking and developing pictures makes solid impressions on your experience. Now, let's examine the bottom, or top, depending on your view, part of the pyramid related to teaching others. You're reinforcing the basic knowledge in others and explaining the principles, types, and general guidelines of photography. Theoretically, you're overseeing all the upper or lower segments of the pyramid for students and using your knowledge of the photography process as a guidepost for all of them. And this doesn't even include the pre-instruction time when you're preparing for your own class. All those teaching activities are active agents that call upon what you already know. And remember when we said you get more from pulling something out of your brain than putting stuff into it? That's exactly what's happening with that 90% tier of the pyramid. You're actively extracting from your previously learned knowledge, sending it out, and reshaping it for others to understand and learn. In turn, that reinforces what you know and deepens your experience in the process. It's common that you even surprise yourself and find additional insights by explaining and reasoning out loud in a way that simplifies and condenses. Putting vague concepts into concrete words and images can often have a clarifying effect on your understanding, not to mention your students. Teaching forces you to create bite-sized chunks and teach replication, a task you may find far different from explaining theories or concepts. The Protégé Effect. Teaching to learn isn't a radical or even particularly novel concept in the field of education. It's already regarded as one of the best ways to learn. But there's another element to why teaching can be so helpful to the teacher. Recent studies have given rise to something researchers call the Protégé Effect. This process demonstrates that people who teach others work harder to understand, recall, and apply material more accurately and effectively. There's something about the work required to extend your knowledge and understanding to another mind that makes you more creative, empathetic, and broader-minded. Tutors in general, therefore, score more highly on tests than their non-tutoring counterparts. Why do you think this might be? To increase the usefulness of this effect, scientists have developed virtual pupils for students to tutor. These virtual students are known as teachable agents, or TAs. Researchers at Stanford University, which is sort of a hotbed for this kind of technology, explain TAs as follows. Students teach their agent by creating a concept map that serves as the agent's brain. An artificial intelligence engine enables the agent to interactively answer questions posed to it by traversing the links and nodes in its map. As the agent reasons, it also animates the path it's following, thereby providing feedback as well as a visible model of thinking for the students. Students can then use the feedback to revise their agent's knowledge and consequently their own. Students working with a teachable agent are therefore on the opposite side of where they usually are in the typical teaching paradigm. Instead of being the student, they're the teacher. The TAs serve as student models, and like all active students, they can ask questions and even give wrong answers. Trials have shown that students using TAs significantly outperform their peers who've only been studying for themselves without TAs to serve as feedback. Stanford scientists studied the effect of TAs on 8th grade biology students. Some students were asked to learn biological concepts so they could teach their TAs. The rest were asked to develop an online concept map to demonstrate how their understanding of the concepts was organized. Results showed the students who worked with TAs spent more time engaged with the concept and displayed more motivation to learn. Simply put, the students put forth greater effort to learn for teaching their TAs than they did for themselves. They felt responsibility and accountability beyond themselves, and this made them put in the extra work regarding their expertise. The protégés are depending on you. The scientists at Stanford attributed 3 factors to the power of the protégé effect. The ego protective buffer. This is a sort of psychological shield that allows students to examine failure without the negative feelings it typically produces. This can be a powerful metacognitive force since students are more apt to reflect upon their learning without the emotional sting of disappointment. It's almost like a crash course in cultivating a growth mindset and embracing failure productively. Incrementalistic view of intelligence. When the learning process is directed externally to support another's learning, students spend more time examining their own understanding. This helps students see how reviewing and revising their insight can impact their own learning. Sense of responsibility. Teaching another person, or in this example, the virtual TAs, motivates students to take more command over their own learning process. When they realize that what they say will be absorbed by another thinking unit, they're more meticulous about getting the information right to begin with. Learning is always going to be more effective when we adopt an attitude of conscious and active control over the process, which is something teachers are naturally encouraged to do. Not all of us who aren't teachers or tutors have the opportunity to share our knowledge directly with willing students. However, thanks again to the miracle of technology, you can find plenty of online sites with message boards or forums all filled with questions you can answer, or at least find the answers for. A nice place to start with, despite its somewhat unruly nature, is Quora.com, where users just literally ask questions of the hive mind of the internet. Many questions are very general, and some serve as bait for trolls or fanatics, but they're easily funneled out, and you're left with a lot of genuine inquiries asking for serious answers. It's a good, almost comically quick way to share information with others. More importantly, it allows you to reap the rewards of the protégé effect and learn better. Another way to bring the magic of teaching others into your own study is simply to work in groups with other students and take turns teaching one another. And while it's a little corny at first, you can even achieve similar results by pretending to teach someone else. Make your own presentation and literally stand up and teach an imaginary person. Yes, you can address your pet rock or stuffed toy if it makes it easier. Ask yourself what questions they might ask, or notice where your explanation seems a little vague or strange. Let's recap our 3 main takeaways from this episode. By learning to teach others, we deepen our own understanding and retention, since we uncover a richer and more fundamental appreciation of the concepts behind the material. Compared to other strategies, teaching others may have the highest chance of improving recall and comprehension. The Protégé Effect is the observation that students who teach others do better, perhaps because they learn incrementally, take responsibility for the learning process, and are ego-protected from the prospect of failure. Analogies, examples, and metaphors are powerful tools to convey new concepts. To use them effectively in teaching or learning, make use of as many different analogies as possible and mix them in frequently, using examples to illustrate. Only use those analogies that actually work, and reserve them for more complex topics, since they may only confuse simpler ideas. We'll leave you today with a quote from Richard Feynman, known of course for proposing that if you can't explain something to a 5-year-old and make them understand it, you don't know the subject well enough. Feynman said, "I don't know what's the matter with people. They don't learn by understanding. They learn by some other way, by rote or something. Their knowledge is so fragile."